Alright, let's start by adding our reference image. And a cube. And let's turn our reference image to be a little more transparent and in the front. Back in our cube, we'll move that up on the Z 1 meter. Now we can start entering our dimensions. Let's resize and move our reference image. This might be a good time to let you know that if you stick around to the end of the video, there is a bit of a bonus waiting for you in the form of a discount code for the finished asset and project file we will be creating here. Now it's time to jump into edit mode on our cube. Let's define where the door will be, the thickness of the door that is, and the seam behind it. Going into front view, let's define where the kick area is, that inset area, and grab this geometry and get rid of it. Then using the bridge loop tool, we can fill that in. Now we turn our attention to this seam. Alt-E to extrude along normals, extrude inward, making sure that we are using offset even. Now we have the general shape of our dishwasher. Let's take that door area and hit P to separate by selection. Now we have a separate object. Let's go into front view again and start defining our subdivisions. That looks pretty good. Now something I didn't do was go around the back and fill in our missing geometry. A grid fill will do nicely there. Now let's add some supporting edges around each of our edges that will be beveled. So really this is going to be every outside edge. An easy way to do this is to bevel with a profile of 1. Now you notice something. These aren't beveling the same on every edge. That is because we did not apply our rotation and scale. So let's go into object mode, Control A, and apply rotation and scale. Now if we perform our bevel operation, we'll have evenly beveled edges. So that gives us control loops. Let's go back to our previous selection and mark those all as bevel weight of 1. We're going to be adding a bevel modifier to this, and the limit method will be weight. Change that up to 2 segments, turn this down pretty far, 0.005 might do it, maybe a little more than that. .001 looks okay. Now let's start defining our handle. Before we continue on, we need one more control loop, right there. And let's bring these in a little bit. Now we can select the 4 corners of this handle rim, hit Control B, and then V to start beveling vertices. And what we'll do is select all of these excess vertices and merge them to the corners of our control loop. Now we can select this ring, which is not a perfect ring, so we'll have to do a few different selections to get them all. and bevel that as well. And we want just one seam down the middle. And if you find that your edges are not fanning correctly to make half circles, turn on or turn off loop slide. Now we're going to be separating this piece to be a kind of a plastic rim and a plastic inset, but before we do that, we want to add our next modifier, which is the subdivision surface modifier. And let's select this object, then our door, Control L, and copy modifiers. The reason we're doing this before we start separating anything else is because anything that we separate out will continue having the same modifiers as its original object. So now as we move forward, everything will have the same modifiers. But let's select this main body portion and go into local view, and let's add some bevel weights. This is just a quick reminder that if you stick around to the end of the video, there is a bit of a bonus waiting for you in the form of a discount code for the finished asset and project file we are creating right now. Coming out of local view, going and selecting our door once more, tab into edit mode, and let's select just this ring, and we'll hit P for separate by selection. Select this middle area that's still on the same object and delete. Selecting our new object, we'll tab into edit mode and select all of the outer edges and extrude on the Y just a tad. Now we can select our front edges and mark a bevel weight of 1 on those as well. Going back to our door, we're going to select this ring and change our bevel weight again. Now you can see our object is starting to come together. Let's start to make this kind of inset area that is behind the handle. In the reference image, you can see that it kind of curves along the bottom. So what we'll do is place our cursor here, go into object mode, Shift A, and add a cube. Now we can scale that down until it's just behind that rim. And this has to fit inside the door, so go into top view and wireframe mode so that we can see what's going on. Select that back area and move that in so that it is inside the door and not protruding through the back. While we're still in object mode, let's apply our rotation and scale. Tab into edit mode once more, Control B, and give that a few segments. We will be adding a subdivision surface modifier, so it doesn't need a whole lot. That might even be overkill. Let's do that. That looks good. Now I'm going to go into local view on that piece, and we're going to remove some geometry first, and then we're going to add some edges to support our subdivision surface modifier. K activates the knife tool, C is cut through, and A constrains to angles. A right click allows you to make another cut without exiting the tool. And there, just like that, we have all quads geometry. Let's add a cut here, one down the center, and bevel that so that we have some edge loops. And that looks pretty good. Another control loop we might want to add is around this side, so let's select everything that is not that top part, and inset, hit B for border so that it ignores the border, add a loop here, and we will delete that. The edge that is left, we're going to move that closer to the back, about there, and actually we can use our snapping tool. We can move that on the Y and snap it right there. And we'll take this and move those up here. Now we've made some overlapping geometry, but we'll get rid of that in a moment. Right now, what we want to do is do the same thing over here. The easiest way to do that is probably going to be just to delete half of this and add a mirror modifier. There we have it. And we'll just apply that mirror modifier. Back into edit mode, select all vertices, and search for merge by distance. And that should have gotten rid of all our excess geometry, however it looks like it didn't here. So let's just merge these manually. I ran a merge by distance again, and it looks like it actually did work that time. I'm not sure what I did the first time, but it does appear to be working now. So let's mark our edges that we want beveled, which would be those, and mark the bevel weight. Come out of local view, and it looks like this object does not have the same modifiers as everything else. So Control L, copy modifiers. And there it is. Now our normals on this piece are bound to be facing the wrong way. And the way we can know that is by going to Overlays and turn on Face Orientation. Red is the back side of a face, and we want to be seeing the blue side. So tab into Edit Mode, select all faces, and Shift N for Recalculate. Check the box for inside if nothing recalculates. And now we have it facing the right direction. Let's turn off these overlays, or the face orientation overlay, and go back to our door and go into local view. This ring needs to have an extrusion inward, so let's extrude along the Y. And let's turn on Shade Smooth. Now when we come back out of local view, we can see we have a pretty good looking seam here, and everything should have Shade Smooth on. And that is it for the major shape. We can see that I missed an edge here when we were putting our bevel weights on. So let's go select just this and turn the bevel weight up. There are some problems with this mesh, however. You can see that our edge flow here goes up around the corner here, and that was because I probably neglected to select this edge when I was adding those control loops. Back into local view, and I can fix that pretty quickly. Basically go into a left or a right view, grab your knife tool again, turn on C for cut through, and A for constrain, and we'll cut these edges right in there. Hit enter to finalize that. Select these, and Control Delete will dissolve those edges. And now that I'm looking at this, when we UV unwrap this, we're going to want to not have all this space taken up, because that's just going to take space on our UV map. So right now let's just delete these, because this is geometry you won't see, so there's no sense having it there. And let's move our ref to a new collection by hitting M and new collection. We'll call it ref, our reference. And we can turn off that layer, and you can see that our modeling is actually complete. It's time to move on to our materials. In order to create our materials, we want to open up another editor and change this to our shader editor. Select one of our objects. In this case, we'll select the door because this is where we will put our stainless steel. So hit new for a new material. Creating procedural stainless steel is usually pretty easy. Let's add a noise, and that is a noise texture, not white noise. And let's change our viewport to use material preview so that we can see what it is we're actually creating along the way. Plug factor from this noise into the base color, and you can see what that does here. We want to use this noise texture to create these streaks in our metal, so we need to scale this up quite a bit, but mostly in one direction. The way we will do that is by hitting Control T, and that only works if you have Node Wrangler enabled. Let's turn our texture coordinate system to object and scale it up considerably on the Z. As you can see, if we scale it up on the Z, it kind of smushes it downward. It may be kind of the opposite of what you're expecting an upscale to do, but let's change this to 400. Now we have some pretty good streaks, but we don't want it to just be plain black and white streaks. It doesn't look that great. Let's add a color ramp. And we can leave the white completely white, but the dark end we want to change to a fairly light gray. There's not a huge variation in the color in stainless steel, but there is enough to see these streaks. So while we're at it, this is metal, so let's turn the metallic up all the way, and you can see what that does here. It is reflecting light differently than it just was a moment ago. Now we need to create our roughness map. We can start by duplicating our color ramp and making this darker. The darker the colors are in a roughness map, the glossier they are. So let's take this down fairly far. And so these will dictate the rough and glossy areas of our metal. They're both going to be fairly glossy, but not the same. There should be some variation. Let's take the factor of our noise and put it into factor here, and color should go to roughness. Now you can get an idea of what it's going to start looking like. We may want to turn our subdivision surface up to show 2 subdivisions. So we have our corners just as tight as they will look in the final render. And that looks pretty good. We don't want them to be too sharp, otherwise it won't look very realistic. Metal does have to be bent. It's not just a real sharp corner like that. What we can do to get a final look at how things are actually going to look is to add some lighting. So we can change our color of our background to an environment texture and open an HDRI. Now if we go to rendered view, you can see what this is actually looking like. And it'll be even better if you go into perspective mode, perspective view. Then you can actually see the environment around it. And while we're at it, let's rotate that environment so that we have the lighting facing more on the front and not just the side of the model. So we can select world rather than object. Hit Control T here again with the image selected. And we're going to rotate it on the Z 90 degrees. Now you can see it shining right on the front. And that might be a little too glossy for an appliance, a kitchen appliance. So let's go back to object. And what we want to do is change our dark values here to be a little less dark. Play with that until you have something you like. Too shiny and too dull will not be very realistic. So you have to find the happy medium there that makes it look just right. Okay, I think that looks pretty good for this case. One thing that we did forget to model was the actual handle that goes in here. So let's go back into solid view, and this will be a quick piece to model. We can take our rim object here, select this inner edge or inner face, and Shift D to duplicate and P to separate, and then local view, tab into edit mode, and close up our geometry. Now we need to add our control loops. So let's select all of these faces, not the top and sides though, and inset. And take their bevel weight down to 0 and ensure that these two edges on the bottom go completely end to end with a bevel weight of 1. Using the knife tool, we can fill in this n-gon with some quad geometry. Now that we've completed the geometry of that piece, we can go back to Material Preview, select that handle. It's going to be stainless steel as well. So then we shift select the door, Control L, and copy materials. Now let's change our attention to this inner piece, and we can actually take this rim and the inner recess and Control J to join them. Now let's create a plastic material to go on that. Click New for new material, and a roughness of 0.2 usually looks pretty good to make something look like plastic. We can change the color to something gray, but now it's just a uniform plastic look and it doesn't look very realistic. So let's add some scuffing to it by just making the roughness map a little less even. So let's add a Musgrave. Musgrave texture. Add that here and plug that right into the roughness. Now that doesn't look very good. However, we can add a color ramp, which we actually won't do anything with right away. First, let's change some of the attributes of our Musgrave texture. The first of those changes will be to turn the detail up all the way and take dimension down to somewhere below 1. If we Control Shift click on this, we can see exactly what that is doing. If you'd like, you can add some mapping to that and stretch it out, but I think that's going to look all right. Let's use our color ramp to bring our roughness map back to something a little more realistic looking. I think that looks pretty good. Now there's one other material to add here, possibly two. We'll see what this is looking like once we create this painted metal look. If you've ever looked at the painted metal of an appliance, you'll notice it's kind of bumpy. It's not just a smooth material. So the way we will create that effect in our new material is by messing with the normal. So we're going to add another noise texture and take the color output of that and put it through a normal map node. You can see what that's doing. It's making it look really weird and really bad. So we need to fix that a little bit. So first off, let's change the color to almost black. And change the strength of this normal down to something like 0.1, something really low. And change the scale of our noise way up. 600 is a number I found works well for this. So you can see this looks pretty good, pretty realistic. Now of course if you don't want the bumpy look and you just want it to be smooth, you can do that too. But I think I like this. It matches the style of many appliances I have seen, including the ones in my house. One thing we haven't done is name our materials. So let's go through and name these. If we go into rendered view, we can see what our dishwasher is really looking like now. And if you ask me, there's something missing about that stainless steel, and that is smudging. You can do this procedurally, however, the quick and easy way is going to be to add a smudge map of some kind in here. I'm going to use this map. You can use any that you want. You can get free ones from 3dassets.1. I'm opening up an image editor to take a look at what this actually looks like. So we're going to mix this into our roughness map, and that is a grayscale image. Dark is glossier, lighter is rougher. Let's select our image node and hit Control T. That will bring in our mapping and coordinate system. We don't actually need another coordinate system, so we'll delete that. And let's bring this somewhere down here and take the object node and put that into vector. And we need to change all of these values at once, or at least the x and the y. I like to do that by adding a value node. And if we Control-Shift-click here, we can see that it's just gray. It's not actually showing this map that's over here in the image editor. That is because we need to change flat to box. And still nothing's happening. And that is because our value that we set here, the default is 0, and that makes the scale of all directions of that image 0. We want to, as we bring this up, you'll be able to see what happens here. So that gives us some smudging on the surface. I think that scale looks pretty good. Now we need to mix these together. So let's go back to our principled BSDF node, and we're going to add in a mix node, rather a mix RGB node, and plug these together here. And this makes things a bit too shiny, but before we adjust that, let's bring down our mix a little in the direction of our procedural side and add a brightness and contrast node. Right, like that. And remember, brighter is rougher. Let's turn this up a little bit, and that is possibly too much. Let's make it a 0.05. Play with the factor here until you have something that shows kind of the amount of smudging that you want, or dried liquid is kind of, I guess, what that is. And that is pretty much it for creating our dishwasher. Right now you might be thinking, I really like this tutorial, and I like the dishwasher, but can't I just download the finished asset? Well, yes you can. Just take this discount code to my store link in the description below. Pay attention to the version you are downloading. One version is just the asset. The other contains the project file from this tutorial, as well as some reference materials where licensing permits. I will be creating a tutorial on making an entire kitchen which uses this asset. A link to that will be here in the upper corner once it has been uploaded. As always, if you like this tutorial, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Until next time, I'm Carl with Blender Forge. Happy blending!